Hello and welcome to this training. My name is Jane Stoltze. I am a bariatric dietitian and I'm doing this training especially for you, being the community of BSA. So let's get into this training, which is all about the Puree stage after having weight loss surgery or bariatric surgery. So first, who am I? My name is Jane Stoltze. I'm a registered dietitian, and it's about 7 years ago now that I decided and made the decision to specialise and work solely in the area of bariatrics. And I work with clients online all over the world. You can find me on Instagram, Bariatric Nutrition Coach. You can find me on Facebook. I have a free Facebook community, YouTube. I've got a podcast. There's probably other places. I've got a website, so you can find me if you would like to. So before we get into the Puree stage, the dietary stage after having your bariatric surgery, we talk all about that. I just wanted to talk about post-surgery recovery because I think it's really important to understand why we ask you to do certain things before surgery, but also after surgery. So there are dietary stages that bariatric centres will give their patients to recover or go through those dietary stages after they have their surgery. It varies from one centre to another on exactly what's in those stages, how they're named, and how long people spend on them. But there are some really general guidelines or general kind of steps that people go through. And the first one is fluid stage, and that is, really, and that's what I want to put here, that's your first goal really post-surgery. When you go home from hospital, your first goal is really about reaching adequate fluid intake because you can't drink as easily, you can't drink fluid as easily and quickly as you did before surgery. It can be really easy to become dehydrated. So I'm not going to go into fluid today, but that is your first goal. The first goal is really about getting adequate fluid intake in, so you don't need to go back to hospital to have a drip because you're dehydrated. The second goal, this nutritionally, is we want to build up intake of fluid and also protein slowly and gently. The dietary phases are really put in place to help build up fluid and fluid intake and energy, protein intake, slowly and without causing irritation, to allow your gut to heal without irritation. So that's why there is a change in the consistency of the foods you're being asked to take. Your whole gut around that area that's had surgery and the surrounds are swollen and it's sensitive, so we don't want to aggravate it. So that's really the key why the first stage after fluid is puree. So I'm going to talk about puree, and it is generally after the fluid stage, yes. We're going to go through examples of foods, what foods can be considered in this stage, ways to get that right consistency, and also some tips. And I've also got some resources as well. Really, we can think about this stage as really, when we're thinking texture, baby food texture. And many people have said to me over the years, it is their least favourite stage. And I get it, because most of the foods you eat on a daily basis aren't in this consistency. A few maybe, but mostly not. And it's also, really missing food at this point as well, post-surgery, really having a desire to eat a bit more. Even if your tummy feels full, you want to eat a bit more, your teeth want to do a bit more chewing, but you've got this consistency that you're not used to. And also, it's just, it's more work, and it's generally no one's favourite. And I always like to remind people, just say, hang in there one day at a time, because it's usually fairly limited time that you're asked to follow a puree, generally around 2 weeks. You may have been given different some different guidelines, but often it's around 2 weeks. So it's not forever, and you just take it one day at a time. Now, this is a list of suitable foods, and this will have, I'm guessing, some crossover with the list that you're given by your bariatric centre, because bariatric centres, yep, they give you a list, off you go, list of foods and instructions. So this might have a few different things, but this would be probably a general consensus. But at the top here, I've got no raw nuts until 3 months after surgery. And that is a guideline I give my clients. I've heard other people being given that as well. Raw nuts have rough edges. They have rough edges. We don't want rough edges going in. And that's what I'm going to be really talking about now, is we don't want to have, anything rough, anything that can irritate your very sensitive gut. No lumps and bumps, no seeds, no skins. You might hear me say that a couple of times. So what's on the list? Grains, wheat cereals, such as like Wheat Bix, oat semolina, fruits, tinned fruits. So think of like peaches that are tinned with no skin on, and obviously no seed. And you can, drain them. Peeled and cooked apple, plum, pear, apricot, and blueberries, avocado, banana, vegetables. So a range of vegetables, carrot, pumpkin, etc., peeled and de-seeded, very well cooked. We're talking about that. Florets of broccoli and cauliflower. In the dairy, milk, yogurt. Yogurt's great, but we don't want the yogurts with the fruit bits in them. We want the plain yogurts where there's no skins or no seeds, and we can put a bit of this pureed fruits in, a bit of vanilla essence, and that can be really helpful to flavour that yogurt. Cheeses such as low-fat ricotta, mozzarella, cottage can be really great because they're also moist. Smooth peanut butter, eggs, tofu, beans, the meats and the fish and the seafood. So these can all be trialled in the puree stage after your weight loss surgery. So let's talk about how to get food to that consistency. How do we get these foods to that consistency, the baby food consistency? No skins, no seeds, no lumps and bumps. Well, there are a few foods that will come in that right consistency. Yogurt, so a natural Greek-style yogurt, and as I said, you can put a little bit of pureed fruit in, some vanilla essence, smooth peanut butter. That's another one we don't have to do anything to. Foods which can be mashed with a fork. So the cheeses, the ricotta, the mozzarella, the cottage cheeses, you can get them and mash a bit with a fork, and they can be great. They can be great to add in with some of these other things, such as the meats, to help keep it moist. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Eggs, scramble an egg and then mash it up. You can mash it up with a fork. Avocado can be mashed up with a fork as well as banana. And think of that consistency if you have had children, and remember that that time when you start them on solids and they've got no teeth, just their gums, and what consistency of food are you giving them? If it's feeling a little bit too thick, you can put a bit of milk, a little bit of water with it to make it a little bit runnier, to feel like it's going to go down and settle better. Softer, moister foods will go down and settle better for some time. Many people think they'll get to the full diet stage and everything's just going to go down normally like it did before. For quite a while, softer, moister food will go down and settle better. So it's great to look at ways of how to mix different things together to get that moist and softness in that food. So foods that can be pureed. So you can use a stand-up blender, you can use a handheld blender. Even if you've got a NutriBullet, you can give that a go. Blender that's going to help get that really smooth consistency. And if there is something that you think, oh, this has got some lumps and bumps or some hard bits, you can then run it through a strainer. So a strainer that, you might use, for example, to use when you're baking and you've got baking, you put flour through it to kind of get out the lumps and bumps. You can use that and push food through it, and that will just make sure and take out any of the lumps, and anything that's really solid if you're worried about it. So yeah, we've got wheat cereal like Wheat Bix. You could put some milk with it, milk and yogurt, let it sit, puree it up. Oats, you can cook your oats, puree them up semolina. The tinned fruit with no skins, no seeds. Peeled and cooked apple, no skins, no seeds. These fruits, avocado, banana, you can put them in the puree or the blender as well. Vegetables, and just on this, you may not be cooking your vegetables very well before surgery, and that's fine. But at this point after surgery, you want a really well-cooked vegetable. You want to be easily able to put your fork through it when it's cooked, like really soft, like on the verge of overcooking a little bit, really, really well cooked. Then we blend it. Florets of broccoli and cauliflower, well-cooked tofu, beans and legumes and chickpeas and baked beans. You can put a bit of cheese, cottage cheese in with your baked beans. And if you think there are some really, some of the skins around the beans left that could be an issue, put it through a strainer. Chicken, turkey, beef, lamb, and the fish, wonderful. They are wonderful to have because it's some great protein. You're not going to be able to have a lot, but that's okay. I'm going to share a menu with you in a minute, and you might puree up some salmon and put some pureed pumpkin with it, and maybe a little bit of cottage cheese, and that can help just keep it nice and moist. So you may have mostly of the salmon with a little bit of, say, the pumpkin with it, and you can mash it up and put it all together, or mix it together so it's nice and moist. Another idea, just a little on the side idea for this stage, is that you may puree up some pumpkin, and you're not going to eat it all because you won't be able to eat a lot at each meal. You can use the little ice containers that you put in the freezer for those individual pieces of ice, and you can use those to put your, say, pureed pumpkin that you're not going to eat into those ice container, and then when it's frozen, pop it out and put it in a little Ziploc bag, and then you've got some pumpkin to use at another meal because you can bring it out and defrost it and heat it up. So that can help with food wastage. But also remember, it's only often a couple of weeks you're at this stage, so it's not like you have to do a huge amount of food, because when you get to this stage, you'll realise, you're going to be eating 3 or 4 bites, a very small amount of food, and you're going to be done, okay? But, it's good to try different foods, but we don't want to make a lot of food. Another good tip is to try one new food at a time, and a very small amount. It may be 2 teaspoons, or it just might be a tablespoon of a new food, pureed carrot. Small bites, chewing well, seeing how it sits in the tummy, seeing if it agrees with you. If it does, wonderful. Write it on a list. Start a list of foods that are settling well. If it doesn't, write it on another list. Foods didn't settle well, and the date, because you can try it again in 2 weeks' time, 2 weeks' time after that, and in time, chances are you're going to be able to tolerate that food. So try one new food at a time and do it really slowly. Slower is better. Slower is, I say, if you can go slowly, if you can go quickly, always go slowly. It allows your gut to heal with less, aggravation. We don't want to be pushing it. So some tips for puree stage. Portions will depend on your individual stomach. And I talk so much about this with my clients. Everyone is really different, and I don't give actual amounts to eat. I'm very much into, and it really fits into this 3 and 4, chewing foods well, small bite, chew well, eat slowly, stop when you're satisfied. And what can happen at this stage, and I'll give you an example because I've heard it a lot, scrambled egg. And I'll have clients say, Jane, that was the best scrambled egg I've ever had in my life, because, they've done pre-op, they've had surgery, they've done their fluid stage, and they got food, they couldn't wait, they had some scrambled egg. But they scrambled an egg and they got through half. And their body said, that's enough. And the head said, surely not. How does that work? I've only had half an egg. How am I going to survive on that? I used to be able to eat more than that. And there's a bit of a a kind of a tug of war, I call it. The brain saying, surely not. And the tummy saying, don't eat anymore. I've had enough. We want to listen to the tummy. Over time, you're going to be able to eat more. And over time, your expectations of how much you can eat come down. Okay. Chewing well is wonderful as well because it helps you with that. That's the start of your digestive process, chewing. Saliva, starting to break down the food, also making the most of every mouthful. So you're getting that experience of eating, which you can really be missing after being on that pre-op, surgery time and then the fluid stage. Keeping fluids up at a good level. And I have the goal of at least 1,500 mils or 60 fluid ounces a day. And often when people move onto the puree stage, they take their eye off the fluid ball, so to speak, because you need to get into a good rhythm of eating and drinking. And I'm not going to go through that today, but that is something that really can drop down when people start puree. But we want to keep our eye on fluid. Fluid is super, super important. Is that your key goal? It will stay as your key goal because when you are well hydrated, you feel okay, you've got a better appetite. When you get dehydrated, you kind of start going downhill. Number 5 is, and this links into that softer, moister food will go down and settle better. And that's this, so you can mix different foods together. So the vegetables and fruits and cheeses can be really helpful to keep some of those or get some of those dry foods a bit more moist. But also you can use things like low salt stocks, gravy, low fat mayonnaise, and things like that can really help keep the food moist. Moister food will go down and settle better. So that's definitely a key tip. Okay, resources and providing these resources. Some recipes. People love recipes, even though, yep, you're not going to be eating a lot, but there are I've got some recipes. And I've also got a meal plan. And you're going to see on this meal plan that there's no amounts, there's no volumes of food. And I'm going to tell you why. First, I will say this is not a meal plan that you need to follow exactly. Oh, I've got to have this on Tuesday and this on Wednesday. It really is to inspire different food combinations in the puree stage. This give you ideas of food pairings. And you will see that every day has two high protein shakes because you are not going to be able to eat enough for some time from all your food, get enough protein and enough energy. You're going to need to drink some high protein drinks. But this just gives you, this is inspiration, it is not to follow exactly to the T. Now, why are there not amounts, Jane? Because, tell me how much you need to eat. This links back to what I spoke about before. Everyone is different, and meaning how much you can eat. And from this point, when I'm working with clients, we're starting to foster that habit, relearning the habit of listening to hunger and fullness cues. Yes, you may not feel hungry. We're starting to practice it though. We are starting to listen to the body and eat really slowly. And I teach a protein bites ratio. And at this stage after your surgery, I teach 3 bites of protein for every 1 bite of other. Other is whole grains, fruit, or veg. So you would have 3 bites of chicken and 1 bite of avocado, 3 bites of beef mince for 1 bite of mushroom, 3 bites of porridge. Well, actually, that's all mixed together. You know what I mean? 3 bites of low-fat cottage cheese and 1 bite of mango. And even if they're puree and they're mixed together, they're kind of in that 3-to-1 proportion. And when we do it that way, we're prioritising protein. We're getting some of that other food from this stage. We're not just protein. We're getting some of that other food for flavour and for a little bit of, the nutrients it's giving us. Small bites, chew well, eat slowly, stop when you're satisfied. and it can be only 2 or 3 or 4 bites and you've had enough, that is really, really normal. Listen, I recommend you listen to your body. So I hope that has been helpful. I hope that has answered some of your questions that you have about the pureed stage after having your weight loss surgery. But before I go, I wanted just to talk a little bit more about how I support people before and after their weight loss surgery. And the 2 to 4 month mark after people have their weight loss surgery is a really common time to feel lost and feel stuck. And I've noticed that over the number of people that I've worked with and coached over the years, because people often at that point hit a wall. They have gone through the dietary stages, they've kind of got through, they don't know how to move forward. How do I get all of this, how do I change these habits? How do I get everything working in my life? How do I get the variety of food? How do I eat out? How do I eat when I'm traveling? What do I do in this scenario? I'm craving things. What do I do then? So it is a very common period, the 2 to 4 month mark after weight loss surgery is a very common period to kind of struggle or feel lost. Or you may get through it, wonderful, and all is good. And then it comes to 6 months post-surgery, and that might be a challenging time for you. But I just wanted to share a little bit about, really top line about my coaching and support. I have a program called the Bariatric Nutrition Bootcamp, and I've got 3 different levels of coaching and support. So when I have a new client, we start working together, we set your personal goals that are personal to you for where you are in your bariatric journey and what you want to achieve. And we work together on those goals. I coach you to work towards those goals, achieve those goals over the program. So my big focus is around maximising the outcomes that people get out of their weight loss surgery. Reaching your goals, yes, getting the best weight loss, getting the best health benefits. There is a real window of the tool of bariatric surgery working at its highest. We want to leverage that tool. We want to make most of that window in that early to medium days where you're getting weight loss. We can really maximise it, but at the same time, lay down foundations so you know how to keep all those benefits. I want my clients to feel confident that they are doing everything they can and make those, behaviour changes, not just for the short term, but for the long term. Because the habits that get you the best result from your surgery are the same habits that we want you to keep practicing for the rest of your life to keep those results. So if you're interested in knowing more, DM me the word bootcamp. There's no pressure or obligation after DMing me the word bootcamp. It's about saying, tell me more. I want to understand more about what you do, Jane, and if I'm going to be the right person to help you. So as I said before, I'm all over the place, Instagram, I've even got my email here, and my podcast is on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and that's the Bariatric Nutrition Coach. Thank you so much for listening to this training. I hope you find it of value. And if you have any questions that come out of this training, please send me a DM in the socials and ask me, and I'll answer all your questions. Thanks so much. Bye for now.